You are really welcome. Yesterday, I'm sure that you were delighted from the quality of yesterday's trainer. Now, this evening or this night, I am 100%, even I am over 100% sure that at the end of tonight's class, all of you will be really, really satisfied. Satisfied in the sense that not only the class is going to be real practical, real interesting, but also the trainer is going to impart in you beautiful qualities. And talking of the trainer, we have one of the best and one of the elders, the elders among us. He has acquired over 35 years of expertise in his domain. He's versatile and is familiar with all the practices in the industry. Therefore, the privilege to listen to an icon, to a real icon, an expert in a real sense. His training method is really smooth. He does not drive at a high speed. Rather, he is moderate to the point that even the least attentive student can benefit. So you have all reason to behave in the best way. That is to follow him as long as you are enjoying his class, and also try to make all your possible means not to disturb the class. Yes, try your all means not to disturb the class. So remember to always keep your microphone muted if you do not have the floor. Now, if you ask a question, you can raise up your hand and you will be called and you will unmute yourself. On this note, I want to welcome all of you once again, and at the same time, want to welcome the trainer in the person of Mr. John Flynn. John Flynn himself will introduce himself to you. He has his best way of introducing himself. So on this note, I want to grant the floor to John Flynn. John, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. I hope you're hearing me okay. Yes?
Yes, we are hearing you.
Excellent. Okay. Hi, everybody. Good to meet you all. I see you're from all over the place. We have Ghana, we have Niger, we have various other places, Namibia, which I hope to get to one day, and places like that. So I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I'm practically, well...
Please, John, it seems that your voice is a little bit lower. I don't know if it is from my side.
Oh, what about now?
Yeah, it's better now. It is better.
I've just moved a little bit closer to the microphone here. So, okay, I'm an Irishman. My next birthday, I'm 70 years old. So my first career, I was a scientist, and then I just decided I wanted to change, and I changed to being a consultant in all of the ISO standards. I cover quality, environment, health and safety, information security, business continuity, various other standards as well. I've worked in 26 different countries around the world over multiple industry sectors, and probably my most recent contract was a few weeks ago in Nigeria, in Abuja, working with Central Bank. So I do quite a number of things like that. That was a business continuity one, not a health and safety one. So we're going to have a presentation on fire safety, and the key thing here is we're going to begin first of all with two little videos in a moment or two. I hope Leon can help me show those. There's a few key things to look out for on both of these videos, one of which is a video about a small room indoors, the other one of which is an out of doors one. And the two key things are, number one, I want you to notice the speed of the fire. That's really, really crucial. People think, oh, there's a fire, and I can walk away from it. Fire can move faster than you quite often, so be very careful. So the speed of the flames is one thing, speed of the fire. The second thing is the smoke. Smoke is a killer. Now we're going to return to that theme later on, but I just want you to notice and see how quickly the smoke can accumulate. So the first video we're going to do in Ireland, indeed in most of Western and Northern Europe, we have Christmas trees at Christmas. And quite often these are made of plastic if you want to reuse them, or sometimes they're even a small actual tree. And of course, in both occasions, they can be flammable. Well, the wooden ones, the real ones, are certainly flammable, and the plastic ones, if they're not properly treated, can be flammable. In order to decorate the tree, we sometimes hang little lights on them, so they look nice, and they've got all these little multicolored lights, and sometimes they even flash. So it does look very nice indeed. However, the lights are powered by electric, and they are usually plugged into the mains. And quite often people go to bed and forget to switch them off, and they forget to unplug the lights. And now you're going to see what can happen. This little video is about a minute long, so it's not very long, but just look at the difference. Normal room in your house, everything looking nice little decorated Christmas tree in the corner, everybody happy, and within 60 seconds it was a raging inferno. At 30 seconds in already, that room was the smoke starts filling up at the top, warm air rises, carries the smoke up with it. So the smoke had come down to about 2 or 3 feet off the bottom, which is why they say if you're in a room with smoke, you crawl along the floor. It keeps you out of the smoke. But really, the other problem is it will get very disorienting. You can get disoriented. Even the people who live in the house, even the people incredibly familiar with that room, can actually get disoriented. And if you're not out of that room in about 30 seconds time, your chances of getting out, your chances of survival begin to drop dramatically with every second that passes. So the speed of the fire, really incredible. Within about 15 seconds, that fire was wham. The entire tree was on fire, the entire corner of the room was on fire, and then the smoke, and all filled up within about a minute. Our next video now is, we can start it but move rapidly to about 3 minutes and 15 seconds into it. It's a football game for the football fans. A fire. It's the team was Bradford City playing Lincoln City. I'm not going to go forward, you'll see that. Sorry, just give me a moment. I'm trying to call up my... Aha, there we go. Okay, I hope you can all see the... maybe Leon, you could tell me, can everyone see the PowerPoint presentation?
Yes, please, we can see.
Good. Okay, so how serious is fire? Now, these figures are a few years old, but that doesn't matter. You'll be able to judge anyway by the figures themselves. In the UK, there's about 35,000 fires every year. And I'm only talking about fires serious enough to involve attendance by the authorities, by the fire brigade. And these lead to about 30 fatalities or 2,500 injuries every year. Now, interestingly enough, let's say the population of, let's say, for example, Nigeria is about 3 times more than the population of the UK. So whatever I give you a figure like this, if you multiply it by 3, it gives you some comparison what it might be, say, for example, in Nigeria. However, bear in mind that different countries have different considerations. If you use more electricity, if you use more fuel, if you use lots of things like that, the number of fires may go up. Also, is every fire recorded? Not every fire seems to be recorded. The smaller ones are not included in this figure here. And then there are always major fires, and the one we actually saw the video of was the Bradford City Football Stadium fire. Now, that was in 1985, and there were 56 people killed in that. Now imagine that was an open stand. You think most people should have been able to get out of that stand very easily. No, panic stops that, crowds stop that. There were 56 people killed, 56 fatalities, and there were 265 injuries, many of those from falls and crushes trying to get away from the fire. Then there was another one, 2 years later, King's Cross underground fire. Those of you who have visited London will know about the underground system, a railway running underneath the city mostly. And there are different stations, again underground, where you can change from one railway line to another railway line. Fires underground are even worse than fires above ground. You saw how our enclosed fire in our first video, the smoke and flames filled the room. So this can happen underground. Then you have the Buntsfield Fuel Storage Depot, 2005. A storage depot, they were storing aviation fuel, and they were filling up a tank on a Sunday, and it was supposed to be automatically cut off. When the tank was full, it was supposed to cut off. Unfortunately, the switch to detect the tank is full failed. So they just kept pumping fuel, and the tank overflowed. And of course, once you start pumping fuel all over the place, highly flammable fuel all over the place, it just takes one spark and boom, the whole thing goes up. That was the biggest fire in Western Europe since World War II, since the firestorms whenever they bombed some of the cities in Germany. Then the Grenfell Tower Block in London, a big tower block, and tower blocks have their own challenges. How do you manage to get people out safely? Well, you try to make the entire building as fireproof as possible. And they did a reasonable job of that. However, they didn't think the building looked very nice, so they put cladding, they put a covering round the whole building, and that covering was unfortunately flammable. And once it caught fire, the fire travelled up the entire building. Now, again, you're not allowed to use a lift in the event of a fire, because you may well, if the power cuts, as it's very likely to, if the electricity is cut off, you are quite likely to get trapped in that lift shaft, in that lift, and then the smoke will kill you, and then the fire will burn the body. So you don't use a lift, you must use the stairs. And when you're talking about a tower block, which could be 12 stories high, 12 floors, getting all the way down on the stairs can be a problem, especially for people who are a little bit older, maybe not quite so mobile. So usually when people ring up, the fire brigade told them, wait, we're coming, we will rescue you, we will go. The people who waited died. The fire brigade were not able to get in and to rescue them. The fire was out of control by the time they got there. And then another fire, Notre Dame, one of the world's most famous cathedrals in Paris. So those are some of the really big fires. So what you might want to think about, or if you have other people that you know on the course, what you may wish to discuss is what might make your own particular country, whichever one it is, what might make your numbers higher or lower than what we've seen here. And I think Leon or someone will be sending these out to you, sending these slides out to you. So you can take a look at them, print them out in notes format, and there are some questions for you to think about. What are the regulations in your country? The higher the regulations, the more likely you are to avoid serious fires. What about the level of industrialization? That's a contributing factor to fires. And the availability and response times of emergency services. In a major European city, most of the time, the fire brigades, the authorities, can come easily within 10 minutes. Sometimes in some of the more advanced cities that are very well served with fire brigades, you could have a response time of 7 minutes. But as you saw, an awful lot can happen, even in 1 minute in our first video and in 3-4 minutes in our Bradford fire. So you do need to get out and be safe. If I can move this on now. There we go. So there are some basic principles of fire. We have something here called the fire triangle, because to have a fire, you need 3 things. 2, not enough. 3, a fire. First thing you need is heat. You've never seen a cold fire, so the first thing you need is heat. Then you need fuel. You need something to burn. And of course, it won't burn if there's no oxygen. So heat, oxygen, and fuel. That is the fire triangle. Anytime you do anything about fire prevention, or anything like that, they will speak of the fire triangle. Heat, fuel, and oxygen. If you can remove one of those 3 things, the fire will extinguish. It will go out. And that tells us how we can actually end up by killing the fire. It tells us how to fight fire. Just before we leave that, what are sources of ignition? Naked flames, cigarettes, smoking, sparks, any kind of a spark, be it electrical or whatever. You can also have, and this was a tragedy in Nigeria, a fuel pipeline started to leak. Many of the locals came along to get fuel for free out of the pipeline that was running near to their village. And they would collect that fuel in all kinds of containers. So some ladies would come out of the kitchen with plastic buckets, everything like that. People would grab anything. 2 people grabbed steel buckets. They banged it into each other. Steel against steel. There was a spark. Wham! Massive explosion, big fire, everything went up. They don't even know how many villagers were killed. What they did at the end of the day, there were many blackened lumps that used to have been people. And they collected them all and weighed them and said, well, on average, that's about 200 and so many people. Ignition, you need ignition. Fuel can be solid, wood, for example, anything like that that's flammable. It can be liquid, petrol, diesel, anything, like that. And oxygen, usually air, but can be other kind of flammable gases as well. So remove one of the fire triangle sides and you stop the fire. So let's think 4 ways to extinguish a fire. Number 1, cool it. We remove the heat. And that's usually one of the most common ways. That's how water can be used. And when the fire brigade turn up, they will actually get their big long hoses out and they'll begin to spray water all over the fire. The next thing is smothering. Remove the oxygen. foam does that. You can get all this foam and you spray it out a little bit. Sometimes it looks a bit like shaving cream, but you've all seen foam. And the thing about the foam is it spreads on top of the fire and it cuts off the oxygen. So foam will do that, or a fire blanket. Now, if you go into the kitchens in many places, certainly any commercial premises, you will have a fire blanket, basically a large square of fabric that has been treated to be fire and to some extent heat resistant. And you put it over the fire and it cuts off the air. The fire will very quickly, there will be air trapped under the fire blanket, but it will very quickly be used up by the fire itself, and then no more oxygen, the fire will go out. Now, of course, what you mustn't do is, oh, the fire's out, I remove the fire blanket, because you've just put the air back in, you've still got the fuel there, you've still got the heat there, wham, the whole thing can reignite very easily. So foam and fire blankets will smother the fire. The next thing is to starve. You remove the fuel. You keep stopping it from burning. There's nothing to burn. Now, it used to be in my country that one of the ways we heated our houses, we don't really have air conditioning in my country. We don't need it. We just open a window. And then, wham, we get hot at about 18 degrees. It's about 18 degrees today. I'm just in a shirt and I've been walking around outside all day. So my country's quite cold. So we don't worry about cooling down. That's easy. We worry about keeping warm. So in many of our houses, we would have a fire, an open fire, and we would burn things in that to heat the house during winter. People used to burn coal. And of course, coal generates smoke and soot, and that rose up the chimney, and quite often a lot of that soot and carbon would be deposited on the inside of the chimney, and sometimes that itself could go on fire and you would have a chimney fire. So one of the things they would do, when the chimney was on fire, the burning soot and things will fall down into the fireplace itself, and the fire brigade would come in and start scraping that away, while they would put from the top, they would put down a hose, and they would also start scraping away all of the burning material, all of the burning soot that comes down. So remove the fuel. Let's put that in a different context. You've all heard about forest fires. So you can see here on our little picture, the fireman, and what he's doing is he's clearing an area of fuel. The fire has taken hold of the forest. It is the wind blows it along so it moves, and as it's moving, it's burning all trees. It leaves a trail of burnt wood behind it, of burnt trees behind it. So it's moving along, burning up everything in its path. So they try to get ahead of it. They get in front of it, and they cut down the trees. Sometimes they blow them up. Sometimes, if they need to do things quickly, they'll even start another fire, a small one that they can control, and they will burn all the bushes and all the trees in front of the main fire, put that one out quick, and then when the main fire comes along to that area, it's only got burnt ground. There's no fuel. It can't cross that gap, and then it just burns itself out. Another one is chemical reaction. The chain of combustion or burning oxidation is blocked by certain chemicals like halon, which is very unenvironmentally friendly, or FM200. Halon's now very rarely used due to its effect on the environment, although it knocks down a fire very rapidly. There are only two places I know of, two situations I know, that now still use halon. Almost everywhere else will use this FM200. The two places where you will still sometimes see halon is on an aircraft. If you get up to go to the ladies or gents room at the back of the aircraft, you'll sometimes see a small fire extinguisher. Now, obviously, a fire on a plane 20, 30, 40,000 feet in the air can be very serious. It can be a small fire, but if it causes the plane to crash, everybody can die. So you need to put that fire out in seconds. So never mind the environment, they sometimes have a hail-on fire extinguisher there to kill that fire quickly. The other place is in the military. Hail-on fire extinguishers in an ammunition depot. You don't want all these bullets and shells and explosives and grenades. You don't want them all going bang at the one time. So you'll have a hail-on fire extinguisher there as well. Okay, there are 5 basic types of fire. Class A, and don't worry about trying to remember all these. There'll be a little table and you will get this presentation. Class A fires are the really common ones. You have one in your own home, people maybe cook on them, whatever. It involves solid materials, wood, paper, cloth, furniture. Class B involves liquids or liquefied solids. What's a liquefied solid? Something like fats. You might have runny fats or grease and they solidify over time. Or maybe even paint. Paint starts as a liquid, but then it begins to set. So when you paint the wall, it stays in the wall. So it starts as a liquid, but it ends as a solid. It solidifies. So, and paint can be very flammable indeed. That's why one of the big advances was to find fireproof paint. So you can even have some liquids that are soluble in water. They will mix with the water. And then you have liquids that aren't soluble in water. They will separate, petrol and oil. They float on top of the water. They don't mix well at all. Then we have Class C, which are gases. Typical gases would be butane or propane. I wonder, do I have something I can demonstrate? I have. You put gas in this end. So, gases, butane or propane. I think that was butane. Now, some metals can actually burn if the temperature is high enough. Magnesium, if magnesium starts to burn, it's incredibly difficult to put out. Aluminium will burn as well. Aluminium has some advantages. It's very light, so you use a lot of it in aircraft construction, but at a high enough temperature, aluminium will burn. And then a special one down here, which we almost covered, but not quite. Oils and fats at very high temperatures that you would get in a commercial kitchen. So if you're wanting to make chips, French fries, something like that, you want to fry some food in your kitchen at home, you'll just put on some oil on the electric fire or the gas fire or an open fire, and you will fry your food in that. If, however, you're a commercial restaurant or kitchen and you're having to cook large amounts, you use much higher temperatures and much bigger volumes. So you can get oils and fats at very high temperatures indeed. And again, there are different kinds of ways. For example, Class A fire, cooling's a very good way of getting rid of that fire, so they can use water. Class B, foam, carbon dioxide gas, dry powder. These are good extinguishers for that. Same with gas as well. You could use a bit of water. So we'll see some of these examples in a moment or two. There we are. So you've got your different classes of fire, including one there, electrical fires. Obviously, you don't want to put water on an electrical fire. So water, foam, dry powder, dry special powder, CO2 gas, and wet chemicals. And wherever there's a tick, that's the one that is most appropriate for that particular fire. Now, let's think about what happens if you use the wrong type of fire extinguisher. Think of a piece of machinery, electric saw, and you use water on it. You're going to short circuit the whole thing. So if it's inside a factory and that happens, you could end up short circuiting all the electrics in the factory. You could end up plunging the factory into darkness, and fighting fires is always dangerous. Fighting fires in the dark can be even worse. Television or monitor, fuse box, yes, all of those electric. Supposing it's a petrol spill. We've got petrol, somebody has messed around with, say, a petrol pump in a fuel station, in a petrol station, and petrol has spilled onto the forecourt, and somebody in a car throws a cigarette out the window, does something silly. I mean, you shouldn't be smoking in a petrol station at all, ever. But in any case, the fire starts. And what happens? Somebody runs out and starts to put a hose of water on it. What do you think will happen? Well, they're going to make things 10 times worse. The petrol will float on top of the water, and the fire will spread much, much faster. So petrol spill, again, very dangerous. And you don't use water. You must use one of the other foam, anything like that, powder, whatever. A frying pan or a deep fat fryer in your kitchen. Well, if you come in and let's say you had a pot filled with oil of some kind, palm oil, whatever, doesn't make any difference, and the thing was boiling, and all of a sudden it caught fire, and you try to throw it out with water, wow, you will end up splashing the whole thing everywhere. In fact, if you're standing close enough, you'll end up with scalding hot burning oil all over yourself. So you mustn't use that. You would use your fire blanket, approaching it, throwing it over it to cover it and smother it, and leave it over until everything has cooled down. What causes fires anyway? Well, we all think we know, but there's lots of things. Now, one of the major ones can be malicious. There can be faulty fuel supplies. I've seen some of those faulty fuel supplies ones. They're in the notes to this particular slide. When you get them, it comes as a PowerPoint presentation, and people just generally print a normal view. But if you print the notes view, you'll see at the top of the page, the first third of the page will show the slide, the next 2/3 will have notes on the slide itself. And you might see that malicious and arson attempts are about 43% of major fires. That's amazing, 43% of them. Faulty fuel supplies, I encountered one of those once. I was walking through Marina in Lagos, and I saw a big pillar of smoke coming up in the direction of Apapa. And what had happened there was, beside one of the markets, there was basically a transport hub, and people were coming in with tankers and things like that, and some Okada guys wanted to mix some petrol in with their diesel or whatever it was. They were mixing some fuels, and they were mixing the wrong kinds of fuels, and they didn't really know how to do it properly, and again there was a spark, and wham, the whole fuel depot went up. Faulty appliances and equipment. Now, I see this in Africa on some occasions. You see people and they want to charge a phone. So what do? They get their charger out and they go to the plug, and maybe they've got a 2-pin round plug and the plug is 3-pin square or something like that. So they end up kind of, if it's a 3-pin plug, they lift the little bit with a pencil and then they shove in 2 bare wires. So you see all the time these bare wires sticking in. So basically that can cause a big problem. Way back on slide 2 or so, we talked about the fire at Notre Dame, very famous, world famous cathedral, possibly one of the most famous cathedrals in the world, certainly in the top 5. And the fire there that destroyed an awful lot of it, and I think they've only just managed to start finishing the starting to finish the repairs now. That was some workman was using a power tool and he left it plugged in and he left it live, and again there were some breaks in the leads where bare wires were exposed, and again that caused the fire. Misuse of equipment, trying to do something that use a piece of equipment for something that it's not really supposed to be used for. Deep fat fryers, careless handling of hot materials. You try to handle something, you end up dropping it, it falls on something flammable, and wow. Putting materials too close to heat sources. This used to be a very common one in my country. What would happen would be the lady of the house would wash the clothes. Of course, today in our generation, it can be the man washes as well. I put the washing machine on just as much as my wife, who happens to be Nigerian, by the way, from Edo State. But we would both put clothes in the washing machine. They would get washed, and then the problem is we need to dry them, and we don't have a tumble dryer. So what people used to do in the past, they would go to the open fire, and they would put a chair near the fire and they would drape the damp clothes over the chair in front of the fire, hoping that the fire would dry them out. And why didn't they just hang them outside? Well, because in my country it rains quite a lot. Ireland's a very green country, and it was because of the climate, because we have good rainfall. And many, many days, even in summer, we will have rain. And during the winter, well, it's damp all the time, so you need to kind of keep that fire going, and you need to kind of dry your clothes that way. And very often people would put some kind of clothes too close to the heat source, and again, they would start to burn. Of course, today, due to all the regulations in our various European countries anyway, and some others as well, your clothes need to be made of fire-resistant fabric and materials. So that's sort of important as well. And then you would have other random causes as well. So again, that's all broken down for you. And you would wonder, why would an arsonist want to start a fire? Well, you know, you're wondering all kinds of things like this. It's too late once the fire's already started. And sometimes people want to have a small fire, and it turns out that wham, it gets out of control quickly and people die. Maybe your neighbour wanted to just set a small fire in your house to punish you for something they thought you said or did, but it ends up killing people. So that has happened frequently. So what percentage of fires? You'll see that in the notes. You may be surprised. So we'll now talk a little bit more about fire safety itself now that we understand fire. What are you going to do when a fire is detected? Well, number one, the first and most important thing is raise the alarm. And then you and we think, how are you going to raise the alarm? Who will raise the alarm? And then after that, you're going to have to make a decision. Do you fight the fire or do you evacuate? Part of that will depend on the nature of the fire. Part of that will depend on your organization. And part of it will depend on the country you're in. The more advanced the country, the more developed the country, the attitude is, don't fight the fire. You're not trained to fight fires. Get out stay out, get the fire brigade out to come and sort out the fire for you. Other people may say, we don't have a choice here. The nearest fire brigade is 15, 20 minutes away. We'll have lost the entire building. There are people trapped in it. We'll lose them as well. We have to fight the fire. So things like that need to be taken into consideration. So do remember, most people are not trained how to properly fight a fire. When you do a firefighting course, one of the things they do, and for some reason, I'm going to say a very sexist thing. I'm not a sexist person, but please, ladies, don't be too angry with me if I make this remark. But usually, the guys who are taking the course pick a girl. They pick usually one of the smallest girls, and they tell her to use the fire extinguisher on a small fire. And nobody says anything, because whenever she pulls the handle to set the thing off, there's a bit of a very loud noise, and quite often they drop the whole fire extinguisher right into the middle of the fire. So not everybody's trained in how to fight a fire. Other people will spray the water on top of the fire instead of directing it at the base of the fire. So fighting fires properly is a job for fire brigade and emergency services, or people who have received special training. If you're not a fireman, but if you're working, for example, at a fuel depot, you may be part of a specific team whose job and whose training is geared to, if there's a fire, stop what you're doing, and your job now is to fight that fire. So different countries, facilities and cultures have different approaches to how you will fight that fire. Well, consider some of these, but basically speaking, what should you do? You should follow the instructions and guidance given to you by your own organization. So when do you fight? When you're part of a team in your facility and you're dedicated to this eventuality, yes, you've been trained for that. That's part of your job. Go to your job, fight the fire. Or the other occasion, when the fire is between you and the exit and you have no choice. I cannot run away from the fire. I cannot run to safety. The only way I can go, the fire is blocking it. So I must fight that fire. I must beat it down somehow. I must attempt to get through the fire. That's when no choice. And think about fire extinguishers. Everybody, if I asked, what's the job of a fire extinguisher? And people say to put out fires. Well, that's a simple way. The job of a fire extinguisher in very developed countries is to protect a fire exit. And if you want to find where's the fire extinguisher, you look for the exit. And beside the exit is where the fire extinguisher could be. There. You may say, oh, I need to get out of that doorway, but the doorway, the fire's too close. The doorway itself is on fire. And that's the only way I can get out. So now you get the fire extinguisher and you use the fire extinguisher to beat the fire down enough for you to actually exit the building. So fire extinguishers are placed in order to protect fire exits. So when you fight the fire when you have no choice. Smoke. Now, again, think back to our first two videos, especially the first one. That first video of the little Christmas tree fire. That room filled within about 45 seconds, that room was 60% smoke. Now, today, in most of Europe, the fabric and the foam that make furniture is usually treated so that it will not produce toxic smoke. Wasn't always that way. And the older pieces of furniture, if you burn them, you'll get thick, black, dirty smoke. It will choke you. You won't be able to breathe properly. There'll be particles in it that will stick to your throat and stick to your lungs if you breathe it in. Some people can suffer from smoke inhalation, and actually after the fire's over, they're taken to hospital, and they might not die for a day or so. What it has damaged them so much, the smoke has damaged them so much that it eventually kills them. So smoke is a killer. Indoors, it's even more so. If you're out of doors, you can usually get away from it. The smoke will be rising up anyway, so it's kind of getting away from you, and you, if you have any sense, will be getting away from it. So it's not too bad outdoors, but unless there's a big wind or it's a still day and the smoke's moving across towards you. But indoors, smoke is lethal. And I don't just mean inside a house. Remember that fire we talked about, the underground fire, the London Underground, King's Cross, and these underground stations are very big, especially when you have 3 or 4 different railway lines all crossing, and they bring them in at different levels. So you will have escalators to go up, to go down, to go across to the next platform, all kind of things like that. And it can be very disorienting. People, the first time, the walls, every wall will have maps and diagrams on it showing you. And people can get disoriented so easily, even when it's just normal and everything's working as it should be. Now imagine when there's a panic. Now imagine when the whole corridors are filling up with smoke. Big, big problems there. So when smoke gets confined, it is really lethal. I don't know if you know what a funicular railway is. It's a railway which doesn't just go from side to side, it actually climbs up a slope. They use it to go up the sides of mountains. And in Switzerland, there was a funicular which went into a tunnel, and it climbed upwards in the tunnel until it got to the top of the mountain or whatever it was. And the railway went on fire, the carriages went on fire, and people had to evacuate. So, of course, even though it was up like that, there were stairways, and the people got out onto the stairways. The nearest fire exit was upwards.
John?
But yes?
Can you increase the volume of your device? It seems that your voice is a bit low.
Okay, I just have to try and speak louder. I can't, I've been trying to do that. There's been some problem, and I'm not sure, either I'm not doing something right or there's a problem with the laptop. I still try and keep talking. Forgive me, I don't want to shout at you, but that's maybe the only way you'll hear me.
Okay,
so
thank you. You can speak a little louder. Thank you.
Okay, I'll get closer and speak louder. So the nearest fire exit was upwards. People didn't go that way. The guide led them downwards, even though it was nearly twice as far to the fire exit, and they didn't lead them upwards because that's the way the smoke would go. So if they'd have tried to get up to the nearer fire exit, they could have well have been choked before they got there. So they had to come down. Okay, so when smoke's in a building, it's absolutely lethal. The hot air rises, carrying the smoke and all the other particles that will get into your throat and lungs up with them. When you stop the smoke from moving upwards, as we saw in the Bradford Stadium fire, the smoke was rising up, but it also moved along the canopy, along the cover. So it will spread horizontally in those occasions. So remember a few very important things. Even a small fire can spread and grow much more rapidly than you will expect. Never ever let the fire get behind you. In other words, between you and your exit. Always keep your escape route open. More people die from smoke inhalation than fire. If you're and I hope this is never happening, but if any of you are ever involved in a fire incident, you're much more in danger from the smoke than from the fire. More people are killed by smoke than are killed by fire. Later on, the fire may burn the bodies, but you've choked to death long before that. And if you look at the films and you read about history, when people believed in witchcraft and magic and juju and all that kind of nonsense, people hundreds of years ago would burn a witch. The witch wasn't actually burned to death. The smoke from the fire choked them, so they died from suffocation, not from burning. When you're using a fire extinguisher, if you actually have you can know by the weight of the fire extinguisher if it's full or empty. When that fire extinguisher is half empty, unless the fire is almost out, it's time for you to go, time for you to get away. Because if half of it hasn't done it, it's quite possible using the other half of the fire extinguisher will not kill the fire. And the minute you stop, if it's still burning, it will begin to increase again. So don't just rely on the fire extinguisher. How does heat transfer? Convection, conduction, radiation, and direct burning. I'm going to let you go through those yourself later on, because there's more things important to talk about here. Okay, spread of fire. How does the fire spread? Well, we try to make it difficult for a fire to spread. We try to contain it by using compartmentalization. We create our buildings filled with compartments. If a fire starts in a room and you can close the door and seal the room, pretty soon, remember, the fire needs oxygen. It will burn that oxygen up very quickly indeed. So it will go out. So a compartment is a part of a building separate from the rest of the building by walls and floors and is designed to contain the fire. But how do you allow access to people? In other words, doors and essential services, ventilation, pipes, cables. Well, for cables and pipes, they come through the wall, but that means you have to make a hole in the wall. So around the pipes, you generally seal that area. The fire doors themselves, open up a fire door and have a look down the edge. When you look at the door, you'll see a little strip down the edge of the door. And the idea is that that door is treated. It should be resistant, and usually most fire doors in Ireland anyway will be somewhere between 25 and 35 minutes. Most of them will hold the fire for 35 minutes because we think 35 minutes is enough for the fire brigade to get there and for you to get out and somewhere to safety. But what about the smoke? Because the door may not seal properly, so will the smoke come around the edges of the door? Well, that little strip, it looks like plastic, but it's heat sensitive. And when it gets warmed up, it swells up and expands, and it seals around the door. It's important for you to be out before the door does that. Look at the fire door here. One of the big things about fire safety is to check that your fire doors are all open and all accessible. Now, of course, in some countries, especially where they're not quite so developed, theft is a problem. And people are always worried about somebody sneaking up to a fire door, opening it, and letting in bad people from the outside who will rob and steal. But it's much more dangerous if you have a fire. You may not, it is against the law in this country, in my country, it's against the law to lock a fire door or to block it in any shape or form. There have been tragedies. One of the famous tragedies was a nightclub. Now, when you go to a nightclub with your girlfriend or boyfriend or whatever, there's usually a charge to get into many of them because you're all going to spend your time dancing. So, a very famous nightclub in my country, it was quite expensive, and you would get maybe 3 or 4 girls and 3 or 4 guys all going out together, and they'd say, this is going to cost a lot of money for us to go into the nightclub, so what will we do? I know, we'll pay for 2 people to go in, and they can creep over to the fire door, open the fire door whenever the music's loud and the lights are low, and we'll all sneak in, and then we've all got in free. So to stop this happening, the owner of the nightclub put a chain around the fire doors, and he padlocked them. So one evening, there was a fire at the nightclub, and everybody charged for the fire doors, and because of the chain and the lock, they couldn't get out, and well over a dozen people lost their lives. Well, that's next to murder. The guy, it's called manslaughter. You didn't actually want to murder anybody, but your actions were so against the law and so stupid that you might as well have murdered them. So he was convicted of manslaughter, over 10 years in jail, well over 10 years, for locking the fire door. A couple of things you'll notice about the fire door: it's not a key, it's a bar, and fire doors should always open outwards. Why? I might run for the door and I might be the first guy there, but you and 2 or 3 other people might be coming behind me, and I want to, if the door opens inwards, I'm trying to pull it towards myself, and you guys are standing behind me and stopping me from doing that. Instead, we have usually a bar and the door opening outwards. So if you push me up against the door, you don't stop the door from opening. All you're doing is pushing the door open with me. I remember once checking, and this was again in Lagos. It was in Victoria Island, and it was a very tall building, and that tall building could have had 1,200 people in it when it was very, very busy. And there were 3 staircases. So let's say you would have maybe 400 people going down each staircase, and of course it's quite possible you could have 600, 700, 800, maybe everybody going down the one staircase, depending on the circumstances. So I always like to walk around every single fire door, and I was with the senior management team, the top people in that organization, all heads of departments, people like that, and they were with me. And I said, let's walk down. And they said, yes, okay. So we walked down, and I noticed there was a lock, a padlock on the door. Oh, that door's locked, we can't open it. Oh, don't worry, John, if there's a fire, the security man will come and open it. I said, okay, let's see if that would work. Phone the security man now and tell him to come and open it. So after 2 minutes, they placed the call. Now that's already 2 minutes too long. The guy came and he rushed, he was panting. So he came very, very fast indeed. That took him another 8 minutes. Now that's 10 minutes since we first called for the door to be opened. And when he came, he had a big key ring, and there was about 20 keys on it, and he had to go each one. No, not that one, not that one, not that. He went round the key ring twice until he got the right one. By this stage, it was about 16 minutes. Now, I also pointed out to them that he had to come from the 6th floor down that stairwell. If you'd have packed that stairwell with, say, even 100 people, he would have had to push his way through them to get up to the door. So finally, we got the door open, and I said, 16 minutes. You do realize if there was serious fire, every single one of us is dead by now. They said, yes, we take your point, let's go. I said, no, we haven't opened the door yet. So I pushed the door open. The door went 6 inches and stopped. Some idiot had parked a van on the outside of the fire doors and blocked them. Now, security should have had that van towed away instantly. Of course, everybody always says, I'll only be a few minutes. But that few minutes could be the few minutes that the fire starts. It could be the few minutes that we're trying to get out of a burning building. It could be killing us. So no, you don't get 10 seconds to block a fire door. You get towed immediately. You do not ever park or block a fire exit under any circumstances. Or you could end up like the owner of that nightclub in jail for manslaughter, a nice word for murder. Fire detection and warning systems. In order to take any action at all, the fire must first be detected and the alarm raised. Now, you can detect it in many different ways. You can smell smoke or fumes. You can feel the heat. You can see the fire. So a person can detect the fire. Or you can have heat detectors or smoke detectors. So there are many ways of detecting that fire. And how do you raise the alarm? You can shout. You can hit a little button and an alarm will go off, or a bell will go off, or you can use a megaphone to make your voice carry. So there are many ways of raising the alarm. The next thing then is to try and let the fire brigade know. And you'd think that would be very simple. But yet, all the fire brigades will tell you stories of turning up to a building that it is too late to save you. And they're saying, why didn't you call us earlier? And everybody looks around and I thought you called them. No, I thought you did. And everybody thinks somebody else will call the fire brigade, so nobody does. A fire brigade would rather 20 people call about the same fire as nobody. They will also tell you stories of somebody who rings up and says, hello, our building's on fire, come quickly, bang, and hangs up. Which building? Where are you? Who are you? Tell us more. Some again, fire brigades, depending on the country, as soon as you make a call to them, they trace that call, so they know where you are. And if the phone cuts off, maybe you've hung up being silly, or perhaps you haven't hung up, perhaps you've dropped the phone, or something bad has happened, then they still know where to come to. What I recommend, and it's very easy to do, it costs almost nothing. With each reception desk, with each security man, they keep a little card, and in that card it will say, in the event of fire, and it tells you the number to ring, and there's a little script. This is what you will say. Hello, this is ABC Company. Our building is on fire. Our address is whatever. And you read that. You don't need to think, you just need to read what is in front of you, because people will panic. They will make mistakes. You can sometimes even, somebody says, what's the name of your street? And you're going, you're wasting seconds trying to pick it up. Especially when you're panicking, especially when there's a fire in the same room as you. And, you just want to get out. You just want to get away. So have a little script ready that people can read to the fire brigade. What are the key issues in evacuation? Planned and safe route. How do we keep that route free from obstruction? You regularly have your fire wardens or your health and safety people. You regularly have them walk that route. They will walk along. If they see an obstruction, they will have it removed and they will sanction whoever is responsible for that obstruction. The route will be designated. It will be marked. You can see the little green sign with the arrow and the little, even though you're not supposed to run, you're supposed to walk, but there's a little running man, go this way. And that route will take you to safety. You often see these on the back if you're staying in a hotel and you look at the back door, the back of the door to your room, you will see a little map of your floor showing you the way to the fire exits. And where do you go to? You go to the safe area, to a muster point. The muster point has to be far enough away to be safe. If you had a 30-foot wall, and if that building went on fire and that wall collapsed, your muster point should be about should be more than 30 feet away. It should be about 40 or 50 feet away, so the wall can't collapse on anybody there. Now, very key thing. How do we know everybody is out, and how do we know everybody is safe? Well, that depends on the type of building you're in and the type of organization that you are. People often get you to sign in and sign out whenever you go to a building. And it's important that you do that. Even if you're only going out for lunch, you should still sign out and sign in again when you come back. Why? Well, when you go to the muster point, you stay there. When the fire brigade arrive, the first question they will always ask is this: is everybody safe? Is everybody out of the building? So you should have taken a roll call of everybody that you knew was in the building, and they should be at the muster point, and then you will be able to say, yes, everybody is out. So let's say our building gets evacuated. We all go to the muster point, and I say, this is boring, the fire brigade will come and put that out. I'm going down to the pub for a drink. And I go off to the pub and I don't tell anybody. So someone comes along and they start the roll call. And they call my name, but I'm not answering, because I'm in the pub. And the fire brigade come, is everybody out? And everybody's saying, no, John's missing. We don't know where John is, because I didn't tell them anybody where I was going. So the fire brigade think I'm still in the building, and some of them have to risk their lives searching a burning building for someone who isn't there. So you can actually end up killing somebody by not staying to answer your name on the roll call. However, that's if you know who is in your building and who's supposed to be there. What happens if it's an open public building, a museum, an art gallery, something where the public come and the public go? Well, in that case, you will not be able to know at any time how many people are there. So what we need then is our fire wardens. And what they do is, the fire wardens will have a plan, and they will actually move everybody in front of them towards the exit. Nobody is allowed to pass them. There must never be anybody behind them, because they could get left behind and left in the building. So the fire wardens will move all the way through the building, driving everyone before them towards the exit. Let's also think about people who don't speak the language. Well, you'll notice our little sign up there. There's no language in the sign. So what they actually do is, that's a kind of an international sign for evacuation. Very often, especially if the facility is dangerous, your visitors will have a guide, and that makes things easy, because the visitor is told, in the event of an emergency, follow your guide. What about disabled staff? Disabled staff, well, you have to make special arrangements for them. You usually pair them with a buddy, if possible, and then there must be more than one buddy, so that if the buddy goes on a day's leave or a week's leave, there's somebody else to take over. And it's their responsibility to assist the disabled person. You may have a policy: disabled people, they must be accommodated and their office must be on the ground floor, so we don't have to get them down many stairs. Other people, they have what's called a fire refuge. Now, this is a double-edged sword, and I always consider this a very bad solution. A fire refuge is an area where you will not be able to get out of the building safely. It could be just that the building is too big, too complex, the fire traps me in the building, or it could be that I am disabled and I cannot get down the stairs. So I will seal myself in the fire refuge. And that area is especially constructed to withstand fire for a long period of time. And the hope is that the authorities will come and rescue me within that time span. If it happens, that's great. If it doesn't happen and the building collapses, well, very, very dangerous thing. But if you can avoid fire refuges, great. Who wants to be locked in a burning building? Not me. So what are the key elements of an emergency plan? Like any plan, who does what is done first, and how is it done, and how are the emergency services involved. Many public buildings in the UK will have a special little box just outside the front door, which is locked and sealed, but the emergency services have access to that box. And when they open that box, there are plans of the building, all the facilities for ventilation, all the firefighting facilities, everything they need to know about that building is in that box, all the plans and everything like that. So you have to think about how you involve the emergency services. You produce a fire plan. It contains the following information. What are the escape routes? What are the exits? The fire doors, fire refuges, if there are any. Where are the signs and notices located? People can sometimes phone up, I'm trapped in the building, I'm trapped in the building. Where are you? I don't know. Oh, there's a sign here. It says whatever. So they can locate you that way. Location of alarm detectors and call points. Locations and types of firefighting equipment and locations of emergency lighting. These are all useful on your fire plan. Also, all of this needs to be maintained. Somebody needs to come and check your fire extinguishers at least every year, maybe more often. Your call points, your alarms, your detectors should be tested at least weekly. If not weekly, then monthly. But, definitely I would do it every week. And of course, what's the most important thing in health and safety? There are three most important things in health and safety: risk assessment, and more risk assessment. If you do everything else wrong, but you've got your risk assessment right, you have a better system than someone who has done everything else right, but gets a risk assessment totally wrong. So how do we do a fire risk assessment? There are 5 stages. Identify and record any fire hazards. Identify and record locations and persons who may be at risk. Evaluate and record the risks. Are they high, low, medium, which risks are acceptable, which risks are too high and require remedial action. Prepare, record, and execute an action plan to reduce the risk as low as is practical. Monitor and review this regularly, and that means a minimum of annually. Also, you would review every time there's an incident, a near miss, a fire that was really, really small and put out quickly, but how did it start in the first place? Maybe a proper fire. So any incident will trigger a review, and even if nothing happens, you still review it regularly. What changes are there? Have we new staff in who don't understand the system? Have we changed our infrastructure? Have we changed our materials that we work with? Any kind of change, your risk assessment needs to reflect that. So be sure to identify and record combustible materials. Identify and record all sources of heat and ignition. Identify and record any unsafe acts or unsafe conditions. What could be a good action plan to reduce the risk of fire? Well, maybe reduce rubbish. You remember the Bradford fire, the wooden stand that went on fire. That was because when people go to the football match, they're usually eating things as well, and they drop their rubbish papers, all kinds of things like that, which fell down below the wooden stand. And it accumulated there because it's very difficult for the cleaning people to crawl underneath the stands to clean. And all it took then was somebody to drop a cigarette or a match or anything, and wham, that caused that football stadium fire with 56 dead. So reduction of rubbish, and that's why we don't like to see anything, rubbish or anything, stored in a stairwell. The stairwells need to be kept clear of anything combustible. Stairwells are not for storage. Relocation of stored materials. You may have paint. It should be in a locked cabinet so no sparks, no naked flames can get near it. You should minimize the amount or type of flammable materials. Do you really need to keep that much of that particular chemical or liquid? Because it's flammable. And people say, oh, I don't have to run to the store every week then. Well, it's better to run to the store once a week as to have a big fire. Provision of metal storage cabinets for certain chemicals. Okay, so I'm going to say thank you very much indeed for your time, for your participation. For those of you, I don't know why my sound is so low at the minute, but I do apologize for that. And at this point here, we'll probably take some questions.
Thank you very much, Flynn, for this wonderful and fantastic delivery. Without doubt, the students really enjoy your class as much as they pay attention. It can be really fantastic. This is once again proof of experience accumulated for over 35 years. Your class is clear and stimulating. So, dear class, the floor is open to you for questions. You can raise up your hand, then we call on you, you unmute yourself, you ask your question. Or you can drop your question in the chat box. Okay? So feel free, you are welcome. I can see one question in the chat box from Sebastian Friedel. How about electrical fires?
Okay, well, electrical fires, it's actually covered in one of your slides, but remember you can't use water on the electrical fire. It's usually dry powder or something like that. And you have to be very careful because obviously you don't want to get too close and get yourself electrocuted. So there's a big problem there. And if you're dealing with high tension cables and you go too close to them, the voltage, the electricity can actually jump to your body. So you have to fight electrical fires at a distance and not using water. Using powder, using foam, using CO2 gas, anything like that, but not water.
Thank you.
Olumide has raised their hand. Yoruba, obviously. How does this Awibo know that? Well, I've been around Balogun Market in Lagos many, many times.
Yes. So, Mr. Olumide Balogun, you can unmute yourself and ask your question.
Yeah, okay, good evening.
Good evening. You can turn your videos on as well, if you wish.
Okay. Yeah, good evening. So, why you are talking about the spread of fire? So you made a statement there that never let the fire get behind you. So you are making an explanation that it shouldn't be between you and the exit door. So I didn't really get that, please.
Right. Okay. The idea is you do not want to be trapped by fire. Okay. So when I'm simply saying, when I say don't let it get behind you, I'm simply keep your escape route open. Do not, if I'm in the building and I'm doing something, trying to get people to come to me to take them out, and I notice the fire moving between me and the exit, you must get back quickly. The whole idea is don't worry too much about the words behind and things like that. Make sure the fire does not get between you and your exit. You must always be able to get away cleanly wherever possible.
Mr. Egbe Fabrice. Mr. Egbe Fabrice, you can unmute yourself and ask your question. I noticed Leticia Tawia also was raising his hand. Egbe Fabrice, you can unmute yourself from your end.
Maybe they're not there anymore.
Hello.
Yeah, we are hearing you.
Okay, thank you, sir, for the class. It was so wonderful. My question is this: what if the fuel or the source of the fire is an electric source, but it propagated to another source of fuel, let's just say the wood or plastic? What would be the extinguisher or the right extinguisher to mitigate that type of fire?
Right. The first responsibility of the organization will be, if I have some kind of material I'm storing in my facility, before I store it there, I should check what is the most appropriate type of fire extinguisher, and those are the ones that I should be providing. So really, wherever that is, wherever that material is, whatever the material is, the closest fire extinguisher should be suitable. So that you use the one that is most suitable. It should have been sorted. You don't suddenly start running around, oh, now that's let me check my little table, that's this kind of fire, oh, I need that kind of extinguisher. It's too late to do it at that point. You may not even get it right. It should all be done right. We're storing that over there. What kind of fire extinguisher is it? Ah, yes, that's the one, and that's the ones that are available. So you should, the available extinguisher should be in the correct place anyway. Don't wait for the fire to start before you start wondering, which kind of fire extinguisher should I use? Fire extinguisher suitable for all types of fire, Solomon or Luna has asked. Again, there is no one type of extinguisher which is suitable for everything. Certain ones, like dry powder, may help most of them, but might not be the most appropriate. So there will always be more than one type of fire extinguisher. I live in a 3-bedroom house. Each floor, sorry, not 3-bedroom, 3-apartment house. Each floor has an apartment. There is both water, there is both CO2, and each kitchen has a fire blanket. Fire blanket, just another kind of fire extinguisher, but you know what I mean by it. So that's just in a private apartment, which I live here with my wife, my beautiful little Edo-beard wife. Then there are 3 fire extinguishers: the fire blanket in the kitchen, the water one, and a CO2 one. So these are all there. And the CO2 one, they're on the stairwell. I have floor below me and floor above me, and the fire extinguishers are there to keep us safe. So they're on the stairwell so that we can always get out. That stairwell is protected, so we'll always be able to escape.
Thank you. Please, class, if you still have questions, you can raise up your hand and address your question.
I see quite a number of Nigerian names there.
Yeah.
Olatunji, Ola meaning wealth. Yoruba man.
Yes. You are man of all territory.
The Yoruba call me Ayo, the Igbo call me Emeka, the Ekwere call me Priye, and the Hausa call me Danjuma.
So you are Alaji Danjuma. Alaji Danjuma. Oga Emeka. Well done for your class. Mr. Egbe, you still raising up hand, or is it the former hand? Mr. Egbe, your hand is up. Is it a new hand or still the former hand? You can unmute yourself. Mr. Egbe. Unmute yourself, Mr. Egbe.
Hello?
Yeah, go on, please.
Okay, I don't know if I did not place the question well. My question was, what if the source of ignition of a fire is an electric source, but is burning through, let's say, wood or paper? What would be the best way of extinguishing that type of fire?
Well,
is it through water?
The wood or paper will not conduct electricity. If you can put water on them without it touching the electricity, then good. If you can't, it's better to try and use CO2 or whatever. But don't forget, in an electrical fire, pretty soon it might burn through the cables and the electricity will shut off. You'll know that because the place will go dark. And once the electricity is no longer flowing, then you can use whatever's appropriate for the material that's burning. You could use water in that case, but not until you know that the electricity is off. And we tend not to put the really dangerous electricity, the really high voltage stuff and high ampage stuff, the high tension electricity. It's usually controlled and concealed in a metal cabinet, so you can't put water on that.
Thank you. Who else has some concern? We are happy that the class is really clear and concise. Yeah, Dr. Emmanuel. I believe Dr. Walaka. Dr. Walaka, your hand is up.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you so much. I want to appreciate the able Prof, John Flynn, for that wonderful presentation, although I came in late, but I know he always do the needful in terms of sharing his experiences across continents and issues of fire, as the case may be. That was a good one. My own is coming as a more or less like an input or a contribution to the subject matter, you know. So thank you so much, John Flynn, for that wonderful presentation. And I guess the candidates have done the needful. And also, I also want to appreciate the leaders here in this forum, in the person of both Dr. Leon and also Engineer Richmond and the other leaders here. I do salute to you guys. Okay, fine. When we also talk about fire prevention, you know, there is need to understand that as safety professionals, our core focus should be total prevention. Fire safety and prevention, as the course implies, you know, try to give you that knowledge and understanding that you need to focus fully on 100% prevention, because that is the first line of action. As safety professionals, you need to use your intelligence, analyze your workplace, analyze your home environment, understand the source of ignitions, the source of fire or source of, because since you have now understood that fire is a hazard, whether it's fire through the matches or fire through fuel or fire through electricity, whatever it is, whatever means it's coming from. So you have to now identify the sources, and also, just as John Flynn was talking about earlier about risk assessment, that is what it boils down to. Do your thorough risk assessment to be able to arrest every situation before its occurrence. Because if you want to experiment fire due to negligence or lapses or omission, as a safety professional, I will tell you that it's going to be a very bad experience, because it means that you as a safety professional have failed to do the brilliant work you need to do to secure the facility. That is what it means. Any other explanation you are giving is just secondary. Do you understand? So there is need for you to pay more attention, read your manuals to understand the elements and also the factors that you need to give attention to. That is where my own concern is, and especially the scholarship students who are really coming into the industry should be able to understand this. Ask them which a fire extinguisher to use, have to find whether in the midst of the fire or whether inside the fire or whether at the top of the fire. The point here is you must have to prevent it. There is no fire that starts out of the blues. No. I know that John Flynn might have shared some videos for you in the start of his video lectures, as he usually do, if you check those incidents, despite how big those fire is, it started very small. And if you're a safety professional, you should be able to identify where those fires are likely to start from. That is where your risk assessment and your intelligence comes in. Making sure that the right things are done, then you won't be able to experience any occurrence or any incident of this subject matter. That is my very candid input to this very subject matter, to what John Flynn have done. Then Dr. Leonie, also there is a lot of hands on the chat. So I think they are raising hands from the chat instead of from the tools directly. Kindly check the chat also. There are hands there. Thank you so much, everyone, for your time.
Thank you very much. Therefore, you can unmute yourself. Those who raise up hand in the chat, you can unmute yourself and address your question, okay? Let me go, not on the chat board. Okay, so you can ask your question. I see Robert, Sebastian Friedel, you can ask your question, as well as Robert Richard. Okay. Please, Flynn, can you stop your sharing screen? Let me confirm something. It seems that some are having difficulty to operate. Can you stop your screen? Let me check some. Some are having difficulty to mute or unmute themselves. Yeah. Okay. So please, those who want to talk, you can unmute yourself. Let me see if it will work. Unmute yourself and ask your question. No one? Wow. This is an evidence that the class is well understood.
Okay, hello.
Unmute yourself, yeah.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Okay, with regards to firefighting and safety, I would like to go back in retrospect and talk about the Alpha Piper incident. In such a situation, what could be the best or what would be advised as a personnel working on a rig or a tanker vessel or a cargo vessel that plies the seas? What equipment or tools would you suggest as a personnel on board and such platforms? What tools would be the safest or should be closest to a personnel working on board? Thank you.
Okay, fire at sea is incredibly dangerous. It's a little bit, probably the only thing worse is fire in an aircraft, okay? So if your ship burns in the middle of the ocean, you may well drown. So key things, now it depends. It's totally different from situation to situation. For what you would need for having an oil rig would be different from a gas rig, would be different from, but there will be commonalities. Let's say it's a ship or a rig, you're going to have living areas. Those living areas, normal fire extinguishers should do. You'll have kitchens, again, fire blankets, CO2, that will do. Once you start to get into cargoes or extractions, like if it's a cargo ship, what kind of material is it carrying? Perhaps it's going to be gases, perhaps whatever you're carrying could give off toxic fumes. You may need to have respirators. Again, this all comes down to your risk assessment, so there's no one answer. You do your risk assessment and you provide the appropriate condition. That's why without the risk assessment, you're just guessing. You may get it right, you may get it wrong. Another key thing which we didn't touch on, well, we touched upon evacuation, but evacuation is very different from ship and very different in an oil rig or a gas rig, because those platforms are generally quite high. And sometimes to jump into the sea, you could be doing a 100-foot jump. Now, water is very hard stuff. People who fall out of airplanes and land in the water, you generally find them with every bone in the body broken, because water is hard stuff. And if you don't believe me, I used to teach scuba diving. Now, if you go along and try and jump into a swimming pool, but dive. If you don't go up onto a board, if you just dive off the edge and you do what we call a belly flop, you don't cut into the water, you just land bang flat on your belly. You go up, your entire skin, it really hurts. So jumping 100 feet down from an oil rig isn't really an option. They have special lifeboats. Those lifeboats are sealed. You get in, you close the door behind you. They drop the lifeboat down 100 feet. That wham will actually go under the water, but it's sealed so it bobs up again. So special evacuation. One of the things which I would always have loved to have done, they do a thing called a helicopter dunk. What happens if your helicopter crashes underwater? How can you get out? And to train for that, they've actually got a massive swimming pool, very deep indeed, and they get a body of a helicopter. You strap in with all the gear on, and they've got a hydraulic ram which just grabs that and pushes it right under the water. And there are divers there, of course, in case of emergencies, but you have to be able to get yourself out. So it all comes down to the individual situation, and that's why risk assessments, you have many occasions you have general risk assessments, but once you start to get into specifics, like, yes, but we're dealing with a gas, we're dealing with a particular flammable substance, might be a gas, might be a solid, could be whatever, that's when your risk assessments become so important. Your risk assessment will consider the availability of the firefighting equipment. Is it the most appropriate? We could talk for weeks on what's the most appropriate for this situation or that situation, but the people who know the industry, and usually most industries will have regulations or they will have guidelines that will tell you where you have this, you should have so many of these kind of fire extinguishers or that kind of fire extinguishers.
Thank you. We have Mr. Robert Richard. You can unmute yourself, Mr. Robert Richard. Please unmute yourself and address your question.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now. Good evening.
Can you hear me, sir? Can you hear me, sir?
Yes.
Hear me?
Yes.
I can hear you.
All right. Here's my question, sir. In the case of electrical fire caused by maybe, electrical fire caused by either fuse spark, what would be the best way to, stop any fire outbreak? Is it not like, I'm curious anyway, I'm thinking, suggesting that it happened in a place where I worked before. I suggested we seek for the power source and either disconnect it, and they were like, no, the best is to use fire extinguisher, but wires are burning. So I don't know.
Well, you shouldn't use water on the electrical one.
This is an opportunity for me to ask and know better. I don't know what will be the best way to stop an accident like this. Thank you, sir.
Are you talking about stopping the fire in the first place, or are you talking about fighting it once it's already started? Two very different things.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Assessment, the best way to stop
fighting the source where the fire started.
To stop the fire from starting, that's what your risk assessment's for. once it has started, the risk assessment has failed. That's why
But
you
it could be
always review
dangerous,
it
and that is
after.
the
So then you will go and you will look at the plan for fighting the fire. You will always have plans. What happens if this goes on fire and that goes on fire? So again, down to your risk assessments every time. And you can sit and say, what in this situation, what in that situation. There are 1,000,001 situations. So you go to your work, and whoever's in charge of the health and safety there should say, right, what are the risks in this building? Fire is a risk. What kinds of fire? Where are they likely? What do we need to do to mitigate them? So again, I would just refer, rather than spend months talking about this kind of fire and that kind of fire, there is no one answer at all, unless you just want to say, go to your risk assessments. That's the key thing.
That's nice, Professor Flynn. And we are coming gradually to the end of tonight's session. But before we completely close, let us remind ourselves that tomorrow there is no class during the weekend. So you have time to go through your materials and you go through your notes. You're gonna resume on Monday. On Monday, by God's will, class will resume. So please, kindly remember this. By the way, you have the timetable so that you can consult. Thank you very much. If there is no more question, let's give the floor to the Deputy Governor. Deputy Governor is the chair lady. Deputy Governor, you have the floor maybe to say a few things. And today mark the midterm. That is exactly in a week. Next week, class is gonna come to its end. So we are just at the midterm, and that's why we give you the best of our trainer, one of our best, Professor John Flynn. Professor John Flynn that is a multicultural. He's an Igbo man, he's an Hausa man, and he's also a Yoruba man. But by the way, you also write some book. You can tell us briefly about it. We still have 4 minutes. Since the Deputy Governor does not want to take the floor, you can tell them about your book and how they can buy it.
Oh, well, it's a fictional work about an Irishman out in Nigeria getting involved in oil politics. It's called Oyibo Blood Oil in Africa. Oyibo, for the non-Nigerians, just means white man. White man blood oil in Africa. It's available if you go. I've written it under a funny name, Sean Hayes. And if you go to Amazon, it can be bought as a Kindle or as an actual book. Oyibo. So that's the book. It's all fictional, but it's a very good read. Lots of action in it, lots of fun in it as well.
Thank you very much, Oyibo. Oshe Nagode. It's gonna be really fantastic. So
yeah. Call me Kolo Oyibo, crazy white man. I say Kolo Abi, crazy, yes. Mumu, no. Stupid, no. So I'm crazy, but I'm not stupid.
Thank you very much. We really appreciate having you tonight. And we thank everyone, especially for keeping calm and follow through. It's going to be really wonderful. And we believe the remaining part also is going to be wonderful. On this note, we are coming to the end of tonight's session. We wish everyone a very sound and sound evening or night. I also take good care of you. Do not forget to apply safety measures. You have been learning from Monday to today, so you have acquired a lot of experience. Thank you very much. You can unmute yourself. We're gonna say hi to each other.
Hey, hi, good evening, everyone.
Yeah, good evening.
They can turn on their videos as well if they wish.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, first of all, I want to thank Dr. or Professor Flynn for impacting us with knowledge this evening. And I gained a lot this evening. I really gained a lot, and I learned a whole lot. And I sure know that it applies to others. I just want to say I miss my governor. I've not been able to see him for some time. So today's class has been quite impactful, quite knowledgeable, and I just want to thank everybody for their participation, their focus, and being able to contribute one or two into this class. That's what makes it so wonderful. So thank you all. Thank you and good night.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you and good night to everyone. So you have opportunity to unmute yourself, either your video or your microphone. And you want to say bye to each other. Now, those who are about to take dinner, good night to you and enjoy your meal. Those who have taken, like Leticia, she has taken her dinner while class was going. Enjoy your meal also. Good night to everyone and see you on Monday. Bye to everyone. Bye. Yeah, see you on Monday. Good night and bye.
Yeah, bye everyone, please. Bye. Bye everyone.
Thank you. Yeah, doctor. Bye.
Yeah, thank you. Bye. No, they said the governor is missing. They should find the governor by next week, please.
No. The governor asked for permission.
Somebody
The governor
look
asked
for my
permission.
governor.
Okay.
The governor asked for permission. The governor was in duty. Yes.
All right. Good night, everyone. Good night.
Bye.
Bye.